Hello, everyone. You are watching, listening, whatever you're doing to Sunday Talks with Kelly and Lisa. I would be the Kelly part of that.
Hi, I'm Lisa.
Today, we're going to start with talking about some trauma stuff. Who knows where we're going to end up, but it will be interesting. um, One of the things that people don't understand about trauma is it doesn't have to be a great, big, huge, catastrophic event to cause it. It can be anything. You can be traumatized, as I was often as a child, by watching a baby bird fall out of the nest. That wrecked me every time. I never quite got over it, I don't think. But, a simple thing that's just part of life can be traumatizing to some people if you're that sensitive. It can also be really big stuff. I know someone right now who's had 3 years of essentially hell. When you have one trauma, and then before you can recover from that, you have another trauma, and then you have another trauma. It's really easy to lose yourself completely in that trauma. So, how do you find yourself again? You have thoughts on that, Lisa?
Oh, I'm kind of going through finding myself again. And for me, yeah, I'm really doing a lot of the work to heal whatever it is that I need to heal.
Right.
Sometimes I think we can, and this might be controversial for a lot of people, but sometimes I think we can out heal or out grace ourselves. Like
Mm.
you can sit there and just focus on the layer and then find another layer, find another layer. And
Right.
to me, sometimes that can keep you from moving forward. One of the things I have done is I've really started to look at, okay, this is a scenario that I might have already healed, or I know, maybe there's a little bit of the foundation. For example, I've had several relationships, and that's exactly where I'm going to go with that. I've been divorced twice. I was in an 8 year long relationship that I am no longer in. And for me, I was choosing a certain type of person. Um, and I couldn't figure out why. And, somebody asked me a question of, you seem to have this pattern. Are you sure it isn't you? And I was like, oh, what? No, it's not me. What do you mean? Is it me? And it really was. And the reason was because I was trying to find somebody who patterned after my dad.
Right.
Um, he traveled a lot for work. He lived in another state for a really long time while I was in high school. So some of the men, or most of the men that I was choosing, were very avoidant. And it turns out that I was the one that was avoidant, not the men. I mean, they had
Right.
their own issues, right? But really, when it came down to it, I was the one that was avoidant. And it was adding this layer on this layer on this layer and jumping from one person to another. I wasn't healing that. I wasn't figuring out what was happening. So for me, when I started to peel back those layers, I was like, okay, I can find another one. I can find another one. But when do I stop and finally say, this is not what I want? Let me really now dig into what I want and what are the actions that I can take to get that.
Right. Right. I think sometimes people don't realize what they're doing to themselves. And the flip side of that is sometimes people do realize what they're doing to themselves and they just ignore it. Um, how many people have you known in your life that have obviously been with the wrong person and they just do not want to see it? They're like,
Yeah.
no, but I have someone. And
Yeah.
that's where we fall really short. We shortchange ourselves is I have someone. Is it the right one?
Yes.
Probably not, but I have someone. And
Right.
people
Right.
get relationships, they just don't want to be alone.
Yeah.
So I think a part of that is being honest with yourself. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I really enjoy this person, this relationship? Or am I doing this because I just don't want to be alone?
Right.
You know?
And then that's something right there to heal, and it's this whole cyclical thing. And it's not saying that life isn't going to be difficult and it's not going to have its challenges, But when you look at the scale of, am I dreading going home? What is our sex life like? Now, this is obviously a relationship of a romantic sort.
Right.
What is it? Do we fight all the time? Did that spoon in the dishwasher, was it really that bad that the spoon wasn't in the dishwasher? I actually witnessed a fight where they fought over a spoon in a sink versus the dishwasher. And I was like, what is
Wow.
really happening here? Yeah. And it was at a party and there was a lot of people and we're all just like, it's just a spoon. It was pretty wild, but there was
Mhm.
so much underlying tension that caused that spoon to
Right.
be the reason that there was this fight. It had nothing to do with the spoon. It had to do with other issues like respect or whatnot. But yes, it's wild. It was pretty wild. But when you're looking at 90% of the time, you don't want to walk in the front door. You don't want to be around them. You're miserable. You're miserable. You're miserable. And you're working on yourself to try to fix that, but they want to stay stagnant and they don't see that there are other issues that need to be addressed.
Right.
Maybe it's toxic and maybe it's something that you need to walk away from. And not everything's toxic. Not
No.
everything is easy, but there are certain situations where enough is enough. You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to for people to look, how did they develop that pattern? Because a lot of it is from childhood. And childhood trauma affects everything we do, everything we are,
Yes.
unless you look at it and heal it. I have a client who we were doing Akashic record work, and we were
Okay.
going back, taking her back in her history and then previous life history. Where did she develop this pattern? And what she screamed, and she was in a deep meditative state, and all of a sudden she yelled out, "Do you think one more fight's gonna fix it?" And I'm like, okay, let's stop here. We've got it. Because somewhere in her past, she had seen people just constantly fighting, and she thought that's what a relationship was like. So she picked people to have relationships with throughout her life. It was coworkers, it was romantic, it was friendships, it was everything. She picked people to be in her life that she would constantly disagree with.
Okay.
And that's like creating your own trauma so
Yes.
that you can heal your own trauma. And that was, I wish I could say it was a one-off, but I have a feeling that a lot of people do that. They've
I
passed.
love what you just said right there. It's creating your trauma to heal your trauma
Yeah,
because you're literally repeating the same pattern to fix something that was broken and
right.
it's being presented to you over and over again to see for you to figure out how to fix that
To even just notice
or
it.
to just notice it. Yep. Heal it. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
You have to allow things to surface so that you can look at them and say, "Oh, I get it now." Um, I, healing trauma is in layers. People don't like to think of that. And the onion thing is way overused, and I don't like that either.
I don't like the onion thing.
But but it is layers, and we will circle back around and revisit something again and again and again until we finally go, oh, that's what it is. And we just, especially if you've had a lot of trauma in your life, I think we just keep going. We just, okay, that happened. All right, bury that, bury it deeper, deeper, deeper. And then we're surprised when all of a sudden one day we wake up crying over something that happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, especially women, who have done that very thing. I will get calls like early this morning. I don't know why I'm crying. Why am I crying? I'm not your psychiatrist. I am not a psychiatrist. This sounds like something you need a medical, professional to help you figure out. You need to coach through it. I can do that. But I get those calls frequently enough to realize so many people are revisiting trauma these days. And it's just, I think I think humanity as a whole is going through a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah.
So,
History does repeat itself.
it does.
So we're definitely, I was talking to a friend the other day that, of course, we were talking about some of the not in detail, but some of the current state of affairs. There's some things happening here in Texas. There's this big situation going on right now over one boy stabbed another boy. I'm not sure it's national at this point, but it's pretty big here in Texas as far as it's a racial thing right now. And, it doesn't help that we have certain powers that be who are not helping to calm racial tension, right? They're fanning the flames instead of trying to fix the flames. So, and that's as far as I want to go with that topic. But we were talking about since we evolved to have two legs, we've hated, we've killed, we've caused stress to our fellow beings. This is not something. This is part of the human existence.
Right.
However, maybe it's getting a little out of control, but it is still part of our human existence. But it's how are we going to fix ourselves so that we can help fix the world? And we're not saying that you have to go out and find the answer to peace right now, right now, and that everybody's going to be peaceful. But how do you fix yourself so that you can bring some more healing and some change to the world?
Right.
Yeah.
People don't understand how important it is for everyone to feel positive, to feel good, to be putting peace out into the world. When I teach spirituality, I start with energy. And have you ever walked into a room where everybody is angry and arguing and you just go, ee, it's true. How you feel impacts people around you. And when you are dealing with trauma and you're walking into a room with people dealing with trauma, it's not good. It's really not a good thing. One of the things that recently, I try not to watch the news, I really do. But every once in a while, I will go somewhere and people will be talking about it. And the other day, I happened to be out and there was a kid at an adjacent table to where I was sitting talking about, Mom, why are they yelling at each other? I never listen to you when you yell at me. And I thought, here's this 4 or 5-year-old kid watching something on, his mom's, whatever that was he was watching. I'm not a tech person. I have no idea what that is. It was a tablet of some sort. And how he happened to be on it, I don't know, but it was people yelling at each other. And this kid is saying that doesn't work. I don't listen to it. Why do they think they're going to listen to that? And it just was like, huh, I almost wanted to join their table to find out.
Right.
But
the wisdom from the mouth of babes, right?
Yeah, it was just so obvious to him that people aren't going to listen. It's just, we don't stop and think. We view the world through our own trauma. Everyone's had trauma, big trauma, little trauma, whatever it is. And that's the way we train ourselves to look at the world.
Yeah.
If you've been in a situation where people are always putting you down, when you meet new people, you expect they're going to put you down, unless you realize that's a trauma response. And we just don't, as a whole, want to look at that. It's so much easier to say to somebody else, you're doing this, than it is to look at yourself and go, oh, I'm doing this. I don't know why that is, but we just don't want to look at it.
Or you even magnetize the people that are like that. You tend to navigate towards people who are going to be, they're going to berate you, they're going to put you down a lot. So you tend to find those people and push away anybody else that might be a little bit better for your psyche or whatnot.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting part that you bring up, because I know we're going to get some pushback from this conversation.
Yep, we always do. Okay.
We always do. Sometimes it almost sounds like when you're taking responsibility, you're blaming the victim. Yep. So let's talk about that and how we're not blaming the victim. Let's talk about that.
This is my own personal opinion. I know I'm going to hear it. It's okay. I'm also suffering from allergies right now, so please excuse my itchy nose. It's important to realize everyone has been the victim at one point in their life. Everyone, nobody escapes it, no one. And it's just one of those things you have to learn to go through. You have to look at yourself and realize what you're doing. And that's not making yourself a victim. That is healing your soul. When you're looking at other people, sometimes the best thing a friend can do for you is point out what you're doing. We don't like that generally. And I have seen times where other people that I know have actually stopped being friends because one of them was overly honest with the other one. And yeah, maybe you can phrase things in a different way other than you always do that, because nobody always or never does anything.
Right.
We're all multifaceted beings. Part of the victim thing that I don't like is using it as an excuse. Everyone has been a victim.
Right.
Your experiences are maybe worse to someone else than their own, or they might be lesser to someone else. But the fact remains that it was you being the victim. It's not all those other people. So when someone says to me, oh, well, they'll get over it, they've only had this, you don't know what else they've gone through.
Right.
And you don't know how sensitive they are. You know, earlier I talked about falling apart every time a baby bird hit the ground instead of flew. And that was because I was incredibly sensitive. So things that traumatized me wouldn't have bothered anyone else. And that's the key with victimization and victimizing people and blaming the victim and all that other stuff, is that you don't know how sensitive they are. You don't know what the rest of their life looks like. We need to learn to be more compassionate with each other. It isn't a blame game. We're all trying to get through life. And we all have things that we go through that we have to go through in order to grow our own souls and to do whatever it is we're supposed to do in this life.
Yeah.
It's I don't like calling someone a victim. I really don't, because I think that diminishes them.
I do too.
It's
I think it
really,
makes them powerless. It
yeah,
puts you in a powerless position when you're a victim of something. And I
yeah,
know that I know in like police circles, you're the victim of a crime. You know, if somebody broke into your house, you're the victim.
right,
That might not be what we're talking about. We're talking more along the lines of victim of trauma, victim of
yeah,
abuse, or whatever the case may be.
right,
That I don't like victim because I feel like it's powerless and it keeps you in a helpless situation.
right. And you're not helpless. You're never helpless.
Right. Exactly.
One of the things when I was trying to escape my abuser, and I was very young at that time, I went to a church because I was taught that they will help you.
Yeah.
And this pastor looked at me and he says, I don't remember ever seeing you here before. Are you a member? I went, no, I live down the street. Well, then we can't help you. I'm really sorry. And to me, that was worse than the physical abuse I was running from, because that crushed my heart, my belief system, my soul, everything. And I think a lot of other people have gone through something very, very similar. When you are told, even, you know, you mentioned the police, even the police, back when I was being abused, a neighbor called the police because my ex was choking me on our front yard. And the police got there and he stopped and he said, well, it's her fault. And do you know what the police said? Ma'am,
It's
what
a
did you do?
civil. Oh my God. Are you serious?
You want to tell me how you started this fight? Now, yes, things have changed since then. Thankfully, things have changed since then. We may have gone
Not
too far the other
100%.
way.
We've made progress,
Yeah,
but it's still a civil
yeah,
matter,
yeah,
and there's
yeah,
still
it
very
is.
limited protections that somebody in an abusive situation can get.
Yeah.
So,
But one of the female officers that arrived, she put her arm around me and she says, I am so sorry you're going through this. Are you going to help me? And at that time, there was no real help.
right.
She just told me, she says, you need to run as far away as you can get. So I moved across the country in the middle of the night and left most of my belongings behind. And that's a really common story too.
Yes.
So when earlier we were talking about rediscovering yourself after going through trauma, I went through that procedure and it wasn't pretty. And sometimes people honestly don't know who they are once they get through.
Right.
They just don't know who they are. So one of the things I found really, really helpful was I would write lists. I would just randomly, of course I write anyway, but I would just randomly write down something that I thought I was. And then I would look at it before I went to bed every night and reevaluate. Am I really that? Is that something I want to be? Is that something I don't want to be? But you have to go through a process, and everyone has their own process. But you have to go through that process once you're healing from trauma. Who are you now? You're not the same person that walked into the storm. I can guarantee you that. So who are you now? I think we are getting better as a society, helping people who have gone through something. But we do have a very long way to go.
Yes, we definitely do. We definitely do. One of the things that I like to do is try to remember who I was before,
Mhm.
um, even when, you're in a situation, even from your childhood, you can still look back and say, what did I like to do? What were my passions then? And I use that to help figure out what you're supposed to do with this next step, because you're always strong, you're always empowered, um, and you're always taken care of because you're still here and
Right.
you're still moving forward. Even if you don't feel like you're moving forward, you're still making forward progress. So you're on your path.
I think that's something that people need to remind themselves of. Wherever you are in your life at this point is where you're supposed to be. This is not a race. This is not a competition. The only person you're supposed to be competing with is yourself. And for a long time, I had on my bathroom mirror, be a better person today than you were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just for me, not for anybody else. People would use my bathroom and go, what is that about? And, it doesn't matter. It doesn't apply to you. It's okay. Unless you want to be a better person today than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, but little things that we do for ourselves like that are important. Try different things. I did ridiculous things that I thought I might, like to do just because. I would go to poetry readings. Um,
Okay.
I tried being a barfly, but I don't like bars, and I don't like drunks, so that really didn't appeal to me at all. I tried spiritual groups. I tried a psychic group. That was interesting. There was no talking, but lots of conversation in that one. You know, I tried different religions, I tried everything I could find. And it was literally anything I could find. If I saw a flyer for something, didn't matter what it was, I would go because I was so desperate to reconnect with myself.
Right.
And I didn't have a happy childhood. So I couldn't even go back to what did I used to like to do because I there was nothing there. There was nothing there. So try different things. Even if you know going in, you're probably not going to like it, make yourself go just because it's something different. And when you're trying to find yourself, you need to try as many different things as you can. One thing that I thought I would not like going into it but I ended up loving and do it to this day, is darts. I went to
Oh, okay.
a dart competition, whatever they call dart things, in San Francisco in the early 80s. And I walked in going, I'm not going to like this. And I found out how to play a good aim. So, I still play darts to this day. Same thing with shooting pool. I thought I would hate it. So you may surprise yourself. I know someone who runs marathons now. When she never used to run at all. And she started running one day and she said, that was the weirdest thing. I just started running and I liked it.
I
So
fell in love with it.
yeah, and she just started running and she's always telling me about that runner's high she gets. And I'm like, you go on with your bad self.
Those runners high are amazing. I used to go when I ran in the army and I would get one of them. I'd be like, whew, that's incredible. But I'm not a runner. I didn't like running then, but go her. That's incredible.
You have to try on different things till you find what you like. And then when you find what you like, do more of that. Not everyone is the same. We're all very, very different.
And that could lead to the next career move for you,
It
or
actually
finding your
could.
passion, starting a job or something like that. So, yeah, or starting a career, your own business or whatnot. There's all kinds of stuff out there, and you don't have to do it all at once. You're allowed to take those steps to try to figure that out. I know for me, I tend to always gravitate to the same things every time I have a starting over period. I tend to gravitate. I flew to San Antonio yesterday from Dallas, and then I flew back from San Antonio back to Dallas yesterday. It was a whirlwind of a trip. It was, like a 12-hour trip by the time all was said and done. And oh my gosh, I always forget how much I love to fly until
Yeah.
I'm in an airplane. And it's one of those things I don't care if there's turbulence. I don't care if it's raining. I don't care if it's sunshiny. I don't care if it's the middle of the night. I don't care if it's the early of dawn. I love to be in an airplane. I absolutely love it. Does that mean I'm going to go get my pilot's license? No, but maybe I'm just going to figure out a way to fly as a passenger a lot more, right? So, there's just little things, and I always forget that until I get in an airplane. So, just little things, just take those little steps. Writing, I found writing again. I love to write. So I'm building a business around writing. So, yeah.
It's important to give yourself chances. And I think that's the gist of what I'm trying to get to with trying different things. Give yourself chances.
Yeah.
You'll find what you love. And then you'll find the people that are, kind of resonating with you. And then you'll be able to go on. And a year later, you won't recognize yourself. It's really amazing how far those first tentative steps will take you. It's give yourself that chance. Absolutely.
Well, let's go back to what you mentioned too, the unity, the community. There's healing in that. Finding a place, finding a tribe, finding a crew, whatever you want to call it. There's that unity in community, and it's really helpful to find that there's so many ways to find community now. You don't have to leave your house. You can do it on Facebook. There's, Zoom calls. There's, groups get together and do Zooms. Groups get together and have the community on Facebook where you can have chats back and forth. There's we're allowed to go back out into society now, right? after the big C. So there's, different groups around your plate. There's might be theater, there might be reading, book groups and whatnot. So just find something and get yourself out there. And if you don't like it, it's okay. Go find something else.
That's really important to bring home, that you can try different things. If you find the first thing and you don't like it, don't think, okay, well, I'm not doing anything ever again. And I know people that do that. I'm never leaving the house again. I've probably said that a few times myself. It's just, you have to keep going. You have to keep trying. It's really not one and done. Something just flew from my ceiling. This studio has an energy that people who don't believe in energies feel. So occasionally when I'm doing something on video, things happen. I did something one time and a feather floated down. Well, this is a solid ceiling and there are
Right.
here. Where did that come from? But it happens in here. So, but keep trying, keep going back out. You know,
Yes.
you are not going to achieve your dreams sitting in your house, you know, not talking to anyone. Uh,
Right.
the one thing about social media that I want to talk about a little is be careful when you are finding that your only social contact with anyone is social media. Be
Yeah.
really careful with that. People can get addicted to everything, and I have seen a number of people getting attached or getting addicted to social media. And when I used to talk a lot in battered women's shelters, or battered people shelters now, I guess. Um, and it would always surprise me how much time they spent on social media. And for them, this was something about, I'm tentatively trusting someone else. I am tentatively
Mm-hmm.
trusting this person. But what I was seeing is then they didn't leave the shelter. And you have to
Okay.
go out. You have to leave the house. Now, if you are sick or you are injured and you are somehow mobility challenged, I get it. I've been there too. And it's
Yeah.
really tough. For me, I get extreme cabin fever and I just can't do it for very long. I'm, if recent illness, I was home for about a week and I was like walking outside. Is the UPS driver here? I need a person. Any person. You know? And it just calling the neighbors. Can you come here for 5 minutes? You
Just
know,
come and say hi.
but that's me. And I know everyone is not like that. If you are one of those people, what's that? Anyway, people who sit at home and you never speak to anyone, you never see another living person, you might want to look at that. Look at why. Even extreme shyness, which I understand people do have, you still need to leave your house once in a while. You know, force yourself to leave the house. Um, Even if you're convinced it's going to be a horrible thing, force yourself to leave the house. And the thing is, you build up your confidence that way. And on our old podcast, I've talked about this. My initial thing was um, walk down the driveway. Just walk down the driveway. Just stand outside on your front porch. That's a victory. You've made yourself get up. You've made yourself go outside. Add to it step by step by step. Don't do what I recently did and go out on your front porch with 2 bags of trash and slide down the driveway and break every bone on your left side. Don't do that. Be careful. You have to be determined that you're going to move forward. If you're not ready, you're not ready. It's okay.
Right.
But you have to work towards getting ready. You know, it's for your own good. It's not for anybody else. You have to do it for yourself. If you're not doing it for yourself, you'll never do it.
Well, and then in extreme cases, seek the help of a professional if needed. But
Yes.
there's that type of support, and then there's the community support as well. Like you were calling your neighbors, you just come out for 5 minutes. There's groups that will come and visit.
Yeah.
They'll make an appearance for you. There's a running joke on Facebook or out in the socials about that woman wants to find her husband, but she doesn't leave her couch, or she wants to find her true love, but she doesn't leave her couch, and then somebody falls through her ceiling and she ends up marrying her roofer. Like that's not gonna always happen. True love is not gonna always fall through your ceiling. So
Right.
sometimes you need to get up off of the couch and actually do, take some action for that. But find out if you're right now, do what go to a group doing what it is that you do. If you like to
Right.
play games online. There's groups that meet and you can play games in a room of people. There's even studios where you can go and game. If you're finding that you're liking to read and you're on Book Talk, go find a book club. Things along those lines. So start where you are, and if that's not really what's for you, then go and find something else.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of would be like you're living your dream life is if you have your goats and your chickens at your house and that's your dream life, then maybe you're okay. But
Yeah, I've lived that life. It's a lot of work.
right, people don't understand that. Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And I am a very different person now than I was then. One thing I do want to mention though is there is a lot to be said for manifesting your dreams. And I do know someone like the joke you were mentioning where the guy, fell through the roof and she married a roofer. I have a friend who, after a horrible divorce about 10 years ago now, she says, I'm going to manifest my next love and he's going to knock on my front door. And I was like, you go on with your bad self. It took her a year, but she did. One day,
Wow.
this guy
What?
knocked on her door at the wrong address. It's not the house he was looking for. And they've been married for 8 years now.
Well, see, it can happen then.
I was like, how did you do that? Really? No, tell me, how did you do that? So don't give up. Do what works for you. If you're the kind of person who wants to manifest friends knocking on your front door, you go for it. But you have to believe it will happen. And she truly believed that love was going to knock on her front door. And
I think we also maybe need to next week talk about the action that you take to make the manifestations come true. So there is still supposed to be some action. I don't know what her action was to make some random guy knock on her front door that she eventually married, but there's action as well. And you can manifest things faster by taking that action. So that might be our next week's show topic.
I know one of the things that she did was she wrote a letter to her future self, having met and married the man of her dreams. And she said she looked at it every single day and she did a lot of meditating on it and she was just totally focused. And that is a big key.
Well, there you go.
That is a big, big, big piece of it. So, I'm not saying that you're not going to find the love of your life knocking on your door or climbing over your back fence or whatever it might be, but give yourself, change the odds into your favor, please, if that's what you're looking for.
It might get there faster if you put a little more work into it. Yeah.
But the same thing can be said about people are always asking me, how do I bring money into my life? You can do the same thing with money. You can do the same thing with anything, really. It's just believing you deserve it. And that kind of goes back to where we were initially, is you have to believe you deserve it. And there is a big part of healing from trauma. That is a huge part of healing from trauma. In fact, one of the first things people who get out of a toxic relationship are taught is, I deserve better. I deserve peace. I deserve whatever it is. Working on that is very healing. Work on yourself first. Don't bring other people into your life till you're ready for them. And I've seen that happen before too, is people get too far ahead of themselves. Oh, well, I looked at this for one day. I'm healed. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. So you want to leave it there and we'll.
I think that's a great spot to leave it, actually. Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. Please, please like and share the video. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.